Welcome to Meet Monumental Historic Women, sponsored by LexSeeHer and Lexington Historical Society. LexSeeHer has a focus on women, but we welcome people of all genders. LexSeeHer is a group with a mission to make the contributions of women visible in Lexington. Our town does not have any monuments recognizing women, and we have initiated an effort to establish a monument to honor women in a visible place in Lexington Center. Lexington is the stage for a critical chapter in American history and democracy, but Lexington's public monuments only tell half of our story. So we're working to make our history inclusive and to recognize the important contributions women have made to Lexington. We invite you to join us by making a donation to LexSeeHer. The link to LexSeeHer donation page will be in the chat, and you can learn more about us at our website, LexSeeHer.com. Our speaker series was established to promote the mission of LexSeeHer by making women visible in Lexington. We use these forums to learn about the contributions women have made and the history of women in our town. The Lexington Historical Society currently has an exhibit at Buckman Tavern titled "Something Must Be Done, Bold Women of Lexington." This exhibit has been an inspiration to residents and visitors to learn more about Lexington women across history. LexSeeHer has also learned about important women from our 5-month open nomination process. There is a common thread that ties all of us through history to the women you will hear about today. Ultimately, that is what the Monument Initiative is about, making this thread visible. Today, we are going to learn about 3 women who are featured in the Something Must Be Done exhibit, and 1 who was nominated from within the community. Stacey Fraser of the Lexington Historical Society and the curator of the Something Must Be Done, Bold Women of Lexington exhibit will talk about Anna Harrington. Leslie Masson, a member of the LexSeeHer Steering Committee, will speak about Margaret Tulip. Sarah McDonough, programs manager at the Lexington Historical Society, will talk about Ruth Buckman. And Jessie Steigerwald, co-chair of LexSeeHer, will speak about Vera Lane. So let me now turn it over to our first speaker, Stacey Fraser.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I have to say I'm using a little bit of my 8 minutes to say how much I love that, LexSeeHer formed at a time where you could take the exhibit research and kind of run with it. I really appreciate that, the exhibit on its own wouldn't have had the visibility, and people wouldn't have maybe been able to get so invested in it without the projects that you all are working on. So I think it's a great partnership. And I'm going to talk about Anna Harrington, who is really pretty cool. She, like many other women in Lexington, was born and raised here. She was born August 13th, 1740. And her parents were Robert Monroe and Anna Stone Monroe, which I always think is great because, we're used to a sort of patrilineal naming convention, in Anglo-Saxon tradition, where you've got we have a million Jonathan Harringtons, and a million William Monroes, and it makes research very complicated. But you do occasionally get a matrilineal naming tradition. And we kind of have one here. We've seen it sometimes with the Simons and Robbins families with women there. But here we have Anna Stone, who married and became Anna Stone Monroe. Her first daughter, she named Anna Monroe, and then Anna Monroe became Anna Monroe Harrington, and she named her first daughter Anna as well. So we have a trail of 3 Annas. And the middle one, as I said, was born in 1740. Her older sibling passed away just before she was born, actually. Her brother Ebenezer died in June, and she was born in August. And as you'll see as we kind of go through the list, childhood illness and childhood death was far more common in the 18th century and before than we're used to, sort of pre-industrial, pre-modern medicine. So her older brother died, so she was raised as the oldest sibling in the family. She had 2 little brothers and a little sister, and then another infant sibling who died young in 1756. At that point, she was already 16 years old, and a few years later, she marries Daniel Harrington, who was from Lexington as well. He was born the year before her in 1739. Given the size of the town, I'm sure they probably knew each other, all the way through school and seeing each other throughout. And they actually were married for 50 years, just over 50 years. They were married in 1760 and she passed away in 1811, and he followed in 1818. So they both lived fairly long lives. She was 71 when she passed and he was, I think, 79. And they were married for over 50 years of that, which I think it's always neat to point out. Daniel was involved in a lot of different things. He was a blacksmith. He was a clerk in Captain Parker's company. But one of the things that, we all know about the 18th century is that most of the work that Anna would have been doing would be household management, children management, that sort of thing. Really, the woman in those days was kind of in charge of the house and the, trying to think of this, was stewardship, basically, the stewardship of the house and the children and kind of all of that. So, her position as the wife of Daniel later became a selectman. The location of their home was all very important. They moved into a house that is now the empty lot on Harrington Road. If all of you can picture Harrington Road when you're standing on the green looking at it, there's the Harrington home on the corner of Bedford Street and Harrington. There's an empty lot in between. And then there's the what's now the Fortman house to the left of that, and then First Parish to the left of that. So their house was right on the common, right on the green, right in the center of everything, across from Buckman Tavern, where a lot of things were happening. So Anna and Daniel were really kind of in the center of everything. And I don't want to be reductive when we talk about the children that they had, but I think it's important to recognize that, for an 18th century woman or any woman prior to birth control, much of your childbearing years are just that. Childbearing every 2 years or so. And you'll see when we actually have a great sampler that shows the family that they built. And so we can actually track those every 2 years. So I'm going to screen share now so that we can do that. And we'll take a look at that. All right. So this is a beautiful sampler. We're very lucky. We got this at auction in 2009, along with a silver spoon that belonged to Anna and Daniel, we think was part of their wedding silver. And that the spoon is actually on exhibit in the first room of Something Must Be Done. So if you go to see the exhibit, there's a small case with some tea accoutrement, and that includes the spoon of Daniel and Anna's. And the other thing that came with it is this amazing sampler. This is a family record sampler. We have a lot of these in the collection. We actually have more in our collection than a lot of other museums, which is really a great resource. And this was completed by Lucebia Winship, who was Anna and Daniel's granddaughter. And you see down the bottom there, we've got Daniel and Anna with their birth dates and their sort of marriage date. The two hearts together, show that. They married in May of 1760, and then the tree goes up and we see our first child. This is Levi. Levi was born in November 1760. And if anybody can do the quick math on that, it's not 9 months. So May to November, as we know, is not 9 months. But, pregnancy kind of for engaged couples and sort of just before marriage was more common, I think, than we think in the 18th century. So she was pregnant when they were married. Levi was born in November. Then Nathan's born in 1762. Daniel in 1764. Anna in 1766. There's that first daughter. Wow. Second Daniel, and I'll explain that, in 1768. Grace in 1770, Betsy in 1772, Eusebia in 1774, another Eusebia, and I'll explain that, in 1776, Isana in 1779, and Lydia in 1780. So, like I said, I don't want sort of the childbearing story for her to be, to be reductive and say this is all she did was have kids, but from 1760 to 1780, that is what she did every 2 years. And in between, there's all the child rearing. So when you think about how busy she must have been and how, it was very common to have large families at the time, but they had 11 children. 2 of them died in childhood. This first Daniel here, 1764, he died just before he was 3 years old. So when his brother, the next son, is born, they name him Daniel. Obviously he was named after his father, the first Daniel, and then the second Daniel is kind of named in part to remember the brother. And the same thing here with Eusebia. She was born in 1774. She actually passed away in October of 1775 from an illness. There was an epidemic right after Bunker Hill and all that, because a lot of the troops, militia troops, were coming in and tenting and staying outside Cambridge. So a lot of diseases were kind of circulating. And actually, Anna Monroe's mother, Anna Stone Monroe, died in August of the same year of 1775 from a disease that was an epidemic that was going around. So this Eusebia, their daughter, died in 75, and they had another daughter in 1776. They would have been pregnant with her when the first daughter died, and they named her Eusebia as well. So really, you know, an amazing sampler, an amazing record of just taking care of that many children, because that on its own is really impressive. And
I'm
then
just going
looking,
to give you a gentle reminder of your timing.
So I'll give the very quick version of what happened to her. You know, that's Anna's, a little bit of Anna's story. Two of the more significant events that have happened to her were the spinning match of 1769. We've talked about that before. We've had presentations, and there'll be more, I hope, in the future. But essentially, it was a political protest by about 45 white women in Lexington who wanted to spin yarn to create an alternative, or as a political statement to create an alternative to British or to British goods, to British imported goods. So it's a boycott against British goods as we're leading up to the revolution in 1769. So Anna Harrington is the host of that event. We think probably picked the house because of, you know, location. They're right on the green. And she is the host. She has 4 children at the time. She's pregnant with her 5th, with her daughter Grace, when the event occurs. And it's a really, you know, it's written up in the paper. We've talked about it before, but it's a really interesting political protest by women. And it is a very privileged thing. You know, we don't know if any of the Black enslaved women or free Black women in Lexington were present. If the enslaved women were present, they would have been working. You know, they wouldn't have been, you know, taking it as a political protest, which I think, you know, is definitely a recognition of that privilege for Anna and others. So skipping forward 6 years, though, so we can do it really quick. Everyone here knows pretty much the events of April 19th, so I won't go into too much detail. But if you can imagine, you know, the house being right on the green, her husband, Daniel, her brother-in-law, 2 of her brothers were fighting on the green. Her father, who was a veteran of the French and Indian Wars, was also on the green that morning, and he was killed. He was shot by the British, and he was brought into her home and laid out there. She was still at home. She hadn't had time to flee before the British came, so she was in the home, saw her brothers and father and husband go out, saw her father alone, you know, come back dead. Her 14-year-old son, Levi, was outside spectating, so I'm sure she was worried about him. And then he went off to kind of the next hill to watch the British troops go off to Concord, and she had to take the other 6 children and go to her mother's house and tell her the unfortunate news that her father had passed. So, and just the damage to the home, the damage to the psyche of kind of being in this house and having all of that happen right in front of you, you know, having soldiers shooting right in front of you, and having that worry of having, you know, 7 children to worry about, making sure they're all safe during that, you know, fracas and the battle around it. Yeah, so Anna has a lot more. We could go on for probably half an hour about Anna alone, but she has a really interesting story. It ties into a lot of really important national events, as we know, and it also ties in and gives us a great example of an 18th century woman in Lexington and what her life would have been like.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Stacey. Thank you. Thank you. We are going to continue this. We've had many speaker series. We're definitely going to continue the topics and highlighting women and speaking about historic monumental women. But if you have questions from today, please email us, and it's in the chat, lexmonument@gmail.com. And then I just want to close out, before we completely close out, I want to go back to Jessie, who will speak on a few comments about LexSeeHer.
Great. So just a couple next steps. If you visit our website, LexSeeHer.com, you'll see the calendar. We have a really busy month coming up. Our work is to make women visible in Lexington in different ways. One is through a permanent monument. And you can read, if you go to our website, you'll see our calendar. We're going to be at the Monuments and Memorials Committee meeting It's a public meeting taking place tomorrow. Monday night, we will have a quick presentation with the select board. The select board ultimately has the authority to approve the placement of this monument on public ground. You can learn more about our call to artists, which is open through next week, by visiting under Monument, the artist page. You can also find the suffragist information. I saw people were interested in more about that as well. You can click on suffragists, that's where the video is, and some links. And in terms of the call to artists, if you click on that, you will, oops, wrong page. On this page, you will see the site that we're proposing as well. This is close to where the Liberty Ride gets off. And since one of our themes is how Liberty has impacted women, that feels like a very nice proximate location. You'll see the site we're looking at, that is our preference as private residents, is within sight of a long way across from where the spinning match took place, as Stacey explained earlier. It's also right near Buckman Tavern. The library is across the street. The visitor center is off in the distance. You see it better in the second photograph. This will require permission. So if you support the monument, we would love to have you get involved and share your thoughts with our town's elected leaders. It's important that they hear from people. And as Betty mentioned in the beginning, we also are paying for this privately, and you can click that here. It's a quick link by credit card or by check. The Historical Society has graciously stepped up to serve as our fiscal sponsor so that any donations are tax deductible. And it's important for us to know the financial support we have in the community for making women visible in our built environment. We're doing very well, but this is meant to be anyone who would like to join can join. It's brought privately because the town is not leading or funding it, but we will need to make sure that they sign off. And for that, I'm sure they'll have lots of questions and that your input will be appreciated.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much to our speakers, Stacey, Sarah, Leslie, and Jessie. We've learned so much already from you, and we will look forward to, thank you speakers, and we look forward to another part 2 of continuing to learn about historic monumental women. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Have a great
Bye-bye.
day.
Goodbye.
Thanks.